The summer camp horror. This summer, I was sent for a practicum at a children's camp. I've been requesting placement at the local resort for ages, but the dean of the teachers' college wasn't particularly cooperative, so they sent me to the middle of nowhere. I spent the entire night on a train, then 2 hours on an old dusty bus before finally reaching my destination. The camp greeted me with tall iron gates adorned with a faded pale sun welded to the bars. I hoisted my heavy bag onto my shoulder and walked onto the grounds. 3 identical buildings stood in a row, labeled Building 1, Building 2, and Building 3. The 4th structure housed the cafeteria, assembly hall, and a small convenience store. The 5th contained the administration offices and medical station. Pretty hard to get lost here. I headed toward the small administrative building where a secretary met me. "Who are you here to see?" an elderly woman asked, looking up. "The director. I'm a counselor here for practicum." The assistant silently rose, knocked on a door, and stuck her head inside. "Ms. Morrison, someone's here to see you." I entered the office and met a stern, white-haired woman. Without looking up from her papers, she said, "All right, Timothy Anderson, so we don't have any problems. Let me be clear from the start. You're not yet a fully fledged educator, so I won't trust you with the little ones. You'll take the teenage group. They're simpler. Your main task is to make sure no one drinks, smokes, gets pregnant, or leaves the grounds without permission. If there are no incidents, I'll sign off on your practicum and you'll receive full pay for the month. I hope we understand each other." "Yes, I understand completely. That works for me," I hastily replied. "Then you can go get settled. Your building is the 3rd one, 2nd floor. If you have any more questions, talk to the secretary or the head counselor." I climbed to my floor. A long, dimly lit corridor with a bunch of doors. The last one was mine. Inside were 2 beds with worn bedspreads, a nightstand, and a TV. While I was showering and changing, my roommate appeared. A tall, thin guy with his hair pulled back in a bun stood looking out the window. "Oh, you're the other counselor?" I asked, drying my head with a towel. "Yeah, I'm Evan," the guy replied, extending his hand. "You working here?" "I'm only here for 3 months," the guy sighed. "I teach art part-time, so for me, summer isn't vacation. It's a chance to earn extra money. You?" "I'm a future PE teacher, and this is my practicum." Evan and I got acquainted and headed to the cafeteria. There I chatted with several other counselors. All of them were here for the first time, so everyone was just observing from a distance. I noticed a very beautiful, tall, slender brunette. Getting closer, I managed to read her badge. Rachel, head counselor. After lunch, I decided to approach her. "Hey, I'm Tim." "Rachel, nice to meet you," she laughed, pointing at her badge. "I'm here for the first time, and I need your help," I said, playing dumb. "Can you show me around?" "Yeah, of course. Come on. It's part of my job." We headed toward the exit, and Evan tagged along. He introduced himself to Rachel and wanted to walk with us. I wasn't particularly thrilled, but there was no choice. The head counselor seemed pleasant. She explained where everything was located, what the schedule would be, what problems she'd encountered. "Which building are you guys in?" the girl asked at the end of the tour. "3rd one, 2nd floor," I answered. Rachel's face changed from pleasant to stern. "Then I need to show you something else." We reached the 2nd floor of our building, and she pointed upward. "We need to go higher." "Why?" Evan asked. "Isn't it the same up there as here?" "You'll see. Follow me." She began climbing to the top floor, almost silently, barely touching the steps. The same long, dimly lit corridor, lots of doors. Nothing special. "This floor is unoccupied," she said. "The rooms serve as storage. Pillows, mattresses, beds, chairs, and various equipment are kept here. If any of the kids are missing something, you can come get what you need." I opened one of the doors and looked into a dusty room piled with various items. "Wait, what are you doing?" she asked sharply. "Just looking," I said, startled. Your job is to make sure the children don't come up to this floor. Not during the day, not at night, never. See that door? The girl pointed to number 28. It's locked. It can't be opened, even by counselors. Only the director has the key. What's in there? Evan tried to peek through the keyhole, but Rachel stopped him. Curiosity killed the cat. Just don't go in there. It's forbidden. Try to only come up here to grab what you need and leave. Understood? Evan and I nodded. Rachel no longer seemed so welcoming. What was so unusual about this floor that she was so worried? That's it, you can relax today. The children arrive tomorrow morning. Well, are you tired? Let's get out of here already. The girl headed toward the stairs, and we hurried after her. I woke up quite early and stared at the ceiling, thinking about how to behave with the kids, how to present myself, strict or friendly, which approach would work better. Then I remembered which counselors and teachers I liked when I was young. Cheerful children's music began playing from the outdoor speakers. 8 a.m. The camp was awake and ready to receive the kids. I ironed my shirt, brushed my teeth, and headed to the gates. Disheveled, sleepy Evan shuffled alongside me. Apparently, he wasn't used to getting up so early. We greeted parents and children at the entrance, distributed the kids among groups, and showed them where to settle in. At first, everything went smoothly, but closer to noon, chaos began. People pushed, cut in line. Everyone seemed eager to dump their offspring and speed away as quickly as possible. In this commotion, I noticed a mother and son sitting apart on a bench talking. "Have you registered yet?" I asked, approaching them. "No, I don't want to go to camp," the boy replied. "Stephen, stop being difficult," his mother said calmly. "You know I have a business trip. I have no one to leave you with." No, I don't want to. I'd rather stay home alone. I'm not 5 years old anymore, Mom," the boy resisted. "You know, I'm here for the first time too, and I don't know anyone either. Want to be friends?" I said to Stephen. The kid reluctantly extended his hand. "I'm still not happy to be here." Behind me, something crashed and I turned around. "Freddie, seriously, can't you hold anything?" A heavy-set woman shrieked at her son when he dropped a bag of groceries. "Mom, you piled so much stuff here that it would take 4 people to carry it." A dark-haired kid was picking up fallen packages from the asphalt. "Poof, you'll get hungry and thank me later." A tall, balding man approached me. "Hello, are you counselors?" I nodded affirmatively. "You're all younger than I expected. I hope you can handle it. Look, my son has quite a personality. He can cause trouble and really get on everyone's nerves. If he does anything, keep me in the loop. Here's my number. Yes, I know it's in the form, but keep it anyway." The man handed me a business card from a law firm. I shoved the card in my pocket and registered these 3 boys in my group. Then I settled them in one room and returned to the gates. The day was hot. I was sweaty and hungry. The other counselor, Evan, also looked exhausted. Only by evening did the stream of people dry up, and without even washing up, we led the group to dinner. Afterward, around 9 p.m., I gathered everyone in the lobby for introductions. "All right, kids, my name is Timothy. This is Evan." I gestured toward my partner. I went on at length explaining the rules, trying to get them interested, but some didn't even look up from their phones. At one point, Evan intervened. "Attention, game time. Guess the name of the person sitting to your right. The girl in the blue shirt starts." To my surprise, the kids went along with the idea and started introducing themselves while I tried to remember their names. After lights out, I checked that everyone was in their places, then went to watch TV. Evan was already asleep when around 1 in the morning, I heard quiet voices. I stepped out of my room barefoot and crept along, listening, trying to figure out where the sounds were coming from. The boys in room 17 weren't sleeping. I entered. "What's going on? Why aren't you asleep?" I understand that a 10 p.m. curfew might be a bit early for teenagers, so I didn't bother anyone until midnight. But guys, it's nighttime. Have some conscience. You can be heard from the other end of the corridor. "Sorry," Stephen said, We were just telling each other scary stories, and someone shouted to make it scarier. Tell me, is it true that a couple of years ago, some guy here got his leg torn off? Freddie asked. If you're not asleep in 5 minutes, I'll tear all your legs off. As I left, I closed the door behind me and quietly walked to the counselor's room. In the morning, I woke the kids up. Not everyone wanted to get out of bed, but they couldn't mess around with me. I brought them outside, lined them up, and started exercises. The boys were like boiled noodles. That's what you get for staying up past midnight, I reminded them with a smirk. I thought I'd run them hard today in the woods. They'd sleep like angels afterward. After exercises, I escorted them to the cafeteria. I sat down to eat breakfast and suddenly saw Rachel. She was heading toward the exit. I quickly swallowed 2 spoonfuls of rice porridge and rushed after her. The reason for conversation seemed trivial at the time. I really just wanted to strike up a chat. Apparently, I really liked her. "Hey, Rachel," I called, catching up to her. "Good morning," she replied, walking briskly down the corridor. "Listen, I have a question." I caught up with her and walked alongside. "Make it quick," the girl said. "I have a lot to do." "Okay, I won't keep you then." I thought it wasn't worth bothering someone over nothing. "Just ask already," Rachel urged. "Last night my boys didn't sleep after curfew. They were telling each other scary stories," I began. The girl rolled her eyes. I felt stupid but continued. "And they're saying that a couple years ago, someone here got their leg chopped off. I was wondering if there's any truth to it?" Rachel suddenly stopped and looked at me with wide eyes. "Who told them?" she asked, then answered herself. "Probably a local kid." "So it's true?" I was surprised. "Come on, let's step aside." The girl beckoned me to an empty hall, looked around and whispered, "Remember this, talking about this subject is strictly forbidden, and tell your kids, don't spread nonsense." "At least explain," I requested. "What do you want me to explain?" The girl's lips twitched nervously with each word. "There was one tragic incident. A child was seriously injured. The camp was closed for a long time. It only reopened this summer. Understand?" "What happened to the child?" My chest went cold. Rachel shook her head. "Doesn't matter. I told you, talking about it is strictly forbidden." "But tell me in secret," I whispered. "Time's up." The girl tapped her watch and walked on. "You're pretty strict, turns out," I said quietly. After breakfast, the kids went about their business. No one required them to be entertained, but I couldn't sit still. An hour later, I gathered them and announced we were going hiking through the woods. Some were happy, others started whining that they weren't getting a break. Kids have gotten so lazy. I was sure I could engage them and led them forward in formation. I also had to be a bit annoying because there should be an element of education in the program. "Guys, why were you goofing around last night, not sleeping? Breaking discipline," I said to the boys. "Well, actually, nobody warned us it was dangerous here either," a kid named Dennis spoke up. "You guys are supposed to be grown up, but you still believe in some boogeyman," I said with a smirk, though it came out kind of nervous. "I don't believe it," Dennis snorted. "Me neither," someone else shouted from the crowd. "Well, good," I replied, deciding the conversation was over. But then Steven shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. "Then who bit off Marcus's leg? I know him personally. He lives on Maple Street, walks with a prosthetic, doesn't talk to anyone." I looked at him sternly. The boy wasn't intimidated by my look and stared back just as severely. "Are you local?" I asked. "Yes, local," he answered. "Let's discuss this one-on-one later," I suggested. We reached a clearing. While the teenagers sprayed insect repellent on their skin, I pulled Stephen aside and quietly asked, "What were you saying about a bitten-off leg?" Instead of answering, the boy started complaining. "I didn't even want to come to this camp. I told my parents to send me somewhere else at least, but they don't care. They just wanted to dump me somewhere for the summer." "Have you been here before?" I asked, picking a blade of grass to chew. Stephen shook his head. "No, but other kids were here with Marcus. who's now one-legged. And who is this koozie of yours? I glanced around to make sure no one was eavesdropping on our conversation. Stephen also switched to a whisper. An evil woman. She lives in this camp on the 3rd floor in a room with just one bed. Marcus slept on that bed. A person can't bite off another person's leg, I explained. She's not a person, the boy said, bulging his eyes. She's like a monster from under the bed. I didn't think to play along. Only kids believe in under-the-bed monsters. Don't believe it if you don't want to, but she exists, Stephen said loudly. If you stick your leg out from under the blanket, she'll come and bite it off. All right, that's enough, I nodded. Are you the one scaring everyone here? No, not me at all, the boy exclaimed again. It was Freddie who told us yesterday. He also knows about her from somewhere, even though he's not from our city. Quiet, I said. The head counselor told me you shouldn't be talking about this. Fine, but what about me? Tell the others, Stephen replied resentfully. I sent him back to the other kids. I thought I'd solved the problem, but everything turned out to be much more serious. The day was busy. The kids looked tired. I reminded them once more that talking after curfew wasn't allowed. I reminded them what time wake-up was and asked everyone to get some sleep. I didn't have an obligation to stay up all night, so I went to my room. Evan and I chatted a bit. He told me about painting nude models in his art class. This poor girl stood for 3 hours, and our studio is cold. I was more interested in something else. Wait, she was actually naked? No, in a tank top and shorts. We don't have full nudity, Evan replied. Ah, those days are gone, I answered, yawning. My eyes were closing. Everything around went quiet. And then I was awakened by blood-curdling screams from above. Help! Help! Evan and I flew out of bed, pulled on our pants and rushed to the stairs. What happened? I shouted, not understanding what was going on. I was surrounded by pale, frightened children's faces. Igor's leg got bitten off, someone among the teenagers squeaked. What are you talking about? I roared. No one smiled or giggled. The kids were serious. I ran upstairs. In the middle of the dark corridor, a door was open. Evan and I burst inside. It was like a nightmare. An empty room, a single bed by the window, a crumpled blanket, and the body of a teenager on the floor without his left foot. I slipped on something. It was blood. Lots of blood all over the floor. Get medics here, Evan yelled. I literally couldn't believe my eyes. I rubbed them hard and looked again. This couldn't be real. Scraps of skin, torn flesh, and protruding bone. Igor lay unconscious with his mouth open. Soon, paramedics came running. They kicked us all out. It seemed like the ambulance arrived instantly too. They took the teenager away. They said he'd lost a lot of blood, but was alive. I remember one of the medics asking, "Where's the foot?" Those words sounded so terrible. Total chaos. A whole camp of frightened children and equally frightened adults. It seemed no one understood what was happening. In this chaos, I found my boys and asked, "What happened?" Igor didn't believe anything. Bet with Freddie that he'd go upstairs, lie on the bed, and nothing would happen to him, Stephen replied, holding his head. They went up. Igor lay down, covered himself, and stuck his leg out. I demanded details. And then what? He looked at me with bulging eyes and answered, "Koozie came." What nonsense. Standing nearby was that same Freddie, shaking in quiet sobs. "Freddie, is this true?" I asked, grabbing his shoulder. And then he burst into full-on wailing. Nothing this terrible had ever happened in my life. Rescuers and police walked around the camp. Lights flashed in my eyes. Adults smoked nervously. Only Rachel stood by a bench away from everyone, wrapped in a cardigan, staring into space. I approached and stood silently beside her. "They shouldn't have reopened this camp," she suddenly said. "What the hell is going on here?" I asked, still in shock. "You can see for yourself," the girl replied. I didn't understand her. Should I believe children's horror stories? "What choice do you have?" she asked, looking at me. "Explain that to me. Another child lost a leg. We won't leave here with clean records. Everyone's going to catch hell. Someone might even go to jail, and the camp will close forever. Probably for the best. In this atmosphere of madness, I involuntarily accepted as fact everything I'd heard before. Kuzi, the terrible woman from under the bed, crawls out and bites off legs. Holy crap. Why did you come back to work here if you knew everything? I asked Rachel. She shrugged. I don't have many options. My father's sick. I need to work close to home. There aren't any other job openings. I could still understand that, but the logic of everyone else was completely unclear. So on the third floor there's a bed where some child got their leg torn off, and they left it there for warm memories? Rachel spoke as if in someone else's words. An evil spirit is bound to this place. If you throw out the bed, the spirit will roam wherever it pleases. Couldn't they have dragged it to some shed nobody knows about? I couldn't believe I was seriously discussing curses. That's not allowed either, the girl answered. A couple years ago, after that incident, there was some kind of fortune teller or witch here, I don't know. Anyway, she walked around, waved her hands, and said the entity couldn't be expelled. It could only be weakened and locked up. Then she added that the entity liked that room and sort of locked it in there. So they put the bed there. Yeah, they really should have warned us about this. Though a few days ago, something like this would have only made me laugh. Where did the kids get the key? I asked. Nowhere. They say they opened the door with scissors, Rachel answered. I shook my head. How reliably everything was thought out here. The girl nodded. Management just didn't take it completely seriously. Here's the result. Tomorrow all the children will be sent home. I hope they won't keep us here long. It's horrible, of course. I saw how others panicked. Adults yelled at children, calling for them to calm down, though they themselves were trembling with fear and tension. That night, there was no sleep. Authorities asked every counselor 1,000 times how such a thing could have happened, threatened us with consequences. Big surprise, what pleasant outcomes could there be here? I couldn't fit what had happened into my head or my heart. A teenager from my group lost his foot. After something like that, life could never be the same again. The very next day, all the children left the camp. The last bus drove through the gates at 7 p.m., and no one told us when we could go home. Only Evan somehow managed to arrange something and slipped away. The rest of the counselors remained in place. No one discussed anything. No one dared ask when we could return home. After a meager late dinner, everyone silently dispersed to their buildings. I lay for a long time looking at Evan's empty bed. Outside the windows it grew dark. Only a dim lamp remained on the table. It was quiet, and then suddenly, the sound of springs and creaking from above. Sounds like coils popping out of a bed. It was definitely coming from the top floor, where no one should be. I got up and went down to the first floor. Rachel had settled in one of the rooms there. I wanted to talk to her. I knocked and whispered, "Rachel, are you there?" "What?" came from behind the door. "Will you open up?" I asked. "I won't," she answered. "What do you want?" These sounds could be heard even on the first floor. "Do you hear that? Something's happening up there," I asked. "Tim, don't make things worse," Rachel shouted. "The old fortune teller said the entity is trapped. It can't get out." "I'm freaked out," I admitted. "And what am I, your mommy? Go to sleep." What a tough lady. What else was there to do? I returned to my room, locked it with a key, and lay down in bed. I covered myself with a blanket, wrapped up my feet, and pressed them against the wall. "Kuzi won't get out. Everything will be fine," I mentally repeated. I didn't want to sleep. I don't know how it happened. Probably the previous sleepless night wore me out completely. As soon as I closed my eyes, an anxious dream began flickering in my head, and suddenly I felt someone breathing hotly on my heel. I opened my eyes. My leg was uncovered, hanging off the edge of the bed, and there was a terrifying face. A woman with disheveled hair and a huge mouth from ear to ear stared at me with wide eyes. She opened her jaws with endless sharp teeth. And then, snap! I jerked my leg back at the last second. The horrible creature caught the mattress and the lower part of the bed. Teeth struck metal. "Help!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. The monster hissed, made angry eyes, and disappeared under the bed. Other counselors were already breaking into my room. The door was still locked, and so was the window. I don't know how the monster snuck into my room. I was afraid to get down from the bed. I was scared it would grab my leg. My colleagues had to break the lock themselves. When they entered, there was no one under the bed. The terrible woman had vanished, but I didn't have to prove anything. The guys themselves saw the torn mattress and teeth marks on the metal bed frame. Maybe the monster had been locked in a trap, but having fed on living flesh, it regained strength and was able to escape. That's what I think. On the third floor in room 28, only fragments of the bed remained, but the lock was intact. It seemed walls and closed doors weren't obstacles for Kuzi. The next day, they let us go home. Nearly a month has passed since then, and I still can't sleep normally. I'm afraid of accidentally sticking my leg out from under the blanket.